The wind on the LaSalle Street Bridge didn't just bite, it consumed. It tore through the laughably thin designer silk of Seraphine's evening gown, a shimmering emerald insult against the gritty, snow-slicked iron. Below, the Chicago River was a sluggish artery of black ice, churning with lethal indifference. The city lights, usually a glittering promise, were just a cold, blurry smear through her tears. He had told her she was worthless. Her father had agreed, his silence a booming confirmation. Marcus, her fiancé, had smiled while he said it, his thumb stroking the heavy diamond ring he'd forced onto her finger. "You're just a signature, Seraphine," he'd whispered, his breath smelling of expensive scotch and something else, something metallic and wrong that always seemed to be on his skin. A beautiful, broken, little signature. He was right. She was broken. The shaking in her hands wasn't just from the cold. It was from the medicine he so diligently supplied. The tiny amber-colored drops he placed under her tongue every morning and every night, promising they would calm the hysteria her father found so distasteful. At first, they had. Now, they just hollowed her out, leaving a terrifying, echoing void. She climbed onto the railing. The metal was so cold it burned, but she barely felt it. It was just one more step, and the void would finally be filled. A foolish waste. The voice was not a shout. It was a low, resonant murmur that seemed to come from the blizzard itself, cutting through the howl of the wind as if it had no right to interrupt. She turned her head. He was standing 3 meters away, unaffected by the storm. He wore no coat, only a dark, impeccably tailored suit that seemed to drink the meager light. His stillness was absolute, more statue than man, with eyes that held the same cold, ancient quality as the river below. He wasn't a cop. He wasn't a concerned citizen. He was something else. "Don't come closer," she whispered, the words stolen by the wind. He didn't move. "I have no intention of chasing you." His voice was cultured, tinged with an accent she couldn't place. "But I cannot permit this. Not in my city." "Your city?" She let out a bitter laugh that turned into a hacking cough. "It's nobody's city. It's just a place to end. Is it?" He took one slow, deliberate step. The snow didn't crunch under his polished shoes. "You reek of it, you know." "Of what? Scotch? Despair?" "Corruption," he said. His eyes narrowed, and for a second she thought they flashed a deep, predatory crimson. "A living soul should not carry the scent of the grave. Someone has been poisoning you." The accuracy of the statement stunned her, stealing her balance. She wasn't just falling into despair, she was being pushed. The realization hit her with the force of a physical blow. She swayed, her grip slipping on the icy metal. She didn't feel herself fall. She only felt the stop. There was no impact, no freezing water, just a sudden, violent cessation of movement. The wind vanished. The sound of traffic died. She was encased in absolute stillness and a surprising, impossible warmth. She opened her eyes. She was no longer on the bridge. She was being held aloft, cradled against a chest as hard as marble, but radiating a heat that was already chasing the deadly chill from her bones. The man, Kalen, was moving through the night, but he wasn't running. The city wasn't blurring past them. It was dissolving. They moved through alleys that looked like tears in the fabric of the world, shadows folding around them like a cloak. The sensation was terrifying, disorienting, and yet she felt no fear. The void inside her had been replaced by a powerful humming presence. She surrendered to it, her consciousness slipping away into the first true darkness she'd felt in months. Her next awareness was of a bed. Not just any bed, but a mattress so soft she felt suspended in it, covered by linens that felt like spun silk, and a heavy fur throw that smelled faintly of cedar and age. A fireplace crackled nearby, throwing warm, golden light onto a room that didn't belong in the 21st century. The walls were carved mahogany, lined with ancient books. The windows were tall, arched, and streamed with sleet, but the sound was muted, distant. She was clean. The emerald silk gown was gone, replaced by soft, warm pajamas that felt impossibly luxurious. Her hair was dry. "She's awake, Marana. I told you she was waking up." The voice was light, childlike. Seraphine turned her head. Sitting in a large velvet armchair by the fire was a girl who couldn't have been more than 10, with wide, curious eyes and dark curls. She was dressed in a simple, old-fashioned linen nightdress. "So she is," replied a second voice, this one stern and deep. A tall, imposing woman entered the room carrying a silver tray. She looked to be in her 60s, her hair a severe, elegant silver bun, her posture rigid. She placed the tray on the bedside table. It held a steaming porcelain mug. "Drink this." Where am I?" Seraphine's voice was a raw croak. "You are safe," the woman, Marana, stated. It was not a reassurance. It was a fact. "You are in the sanctum." Who are you?" "I am Marana. This is Ilara." The little girl waved brightly. "And the man who brought you here is Kalen. He is occupied." "He saved me," Seraphine whispered, the memory rushing back. The bridge, the fall, the impossible movement through shadows. "He prevented a mess," Marana corrected, though her eyes softened slightly. "Now, drink. It is broth. You are malnourished, and your body is fighting a war it is losing." Seraphine's hands were shaking so badly she couldn't lift the mug. Ilara hopped off the chair, took the mug in her small hands, and held it to Seraphine's lips. "It's okay," the child murmured. "Papi Kalen brings home broken things sometimes. Marana always fixes them." The warmth of the broth, rich and savory, hit her stomach, and the dam broke. The simple, profound act of care, the safety of the room, the kindness from these strangers, it was too much. Seraphine dissolved into racking sobs, curling in on herself as months of terror, isolation, and chemical despair poured out of her. Ilara, startled, looked at Marana, who simply nodded. The girl climbed onto the massive bed and put a small, cool hand on Seraphine's shoulder. She didn't say anything. She just stayed, a small, solid presence, until the first wave of hysteria passed. I can't go back," Seraphine finally choked out, gripping the silk sheets. "Please, don't make me go back. He'll find me. He'll kill me." "Who, child?" Marana asked, her voice losing its edge, replaced by a focused intensity. "Who is he?" From the doorway, the man from the bridge spoke. "She can tell us when she is ready." Kalen entered, dominating the room. He had shed his suit jacket, wearing only the dark trousers and a crisp white shirt. The sleeves rolled up to his forearms. He looked timeless, powerful, his crimson-flecked eyes fixed on her. "We cannot help you, Seraphine," he said, his voice that same compelling murmur, "if we do not know what we are fighting." How do you know my name?" "It was on a bracelet on your wrist, along with this." He held up the emerald gown, dangling it from one finger as if it were a dirty rag. Then he tossed it into the fireplace, where it vanished in a whoosh of green flame. "A fragile, useless thing. Now tell us." And so she did. The story tumbled out. Seraphine Davenport, heiress to the Davenport shipping empire, her mother's death 5 years prior, her father's emotional withdrawal, leaving her vulnerable. And then, Marcus. "My fiancé," she said, the word tasting like ash. "Marcus Thorne. Our fathers arranged the marriage. A merger of assets." "He seems unloving," Ilara offered quietly. "He's a monster," Seraphine whispered. "At first it was small, convincing me my friends were toxic, telling me my art history degree was frivolous. Then he started pushing me, grabbing my arms. Unconsciously, she rubbed the bruises she knew were still fading. Marana's eyes sharpened. "Show me." Hesitantly, Seraphine pushed up the pajama sleeve. The skin of her upper arm was a mottled canvas of yellow and deep purple, marked by a grip too strong to be human. Marana hissed, a surprisingly serpentine sound. She looked at Kalen, who had gone utterly, terribly still. "And the medicine?" Kalen asked, his voice dangerously soft. "He said it was for my anxiety. After my mother died, I had panic attacks. My father hated the scenes. Marcus found a new doctor, someone discreet. He brought me the tincture himself. He said it was a European herbal remedy." She was shaking again. He controlled it, decided when I needed a dose. When I argued, he'd withhold it, until the shaking got so bad I'd beg him for it. Last night was our engagement party. I overheard him talking to my father. He laughed. He called me perfectly manageable, and said the tincture was working faster than he'd hoped. He said after the wedding, he'd be able to control my shares of the company completely. Seraphine looked down, ashamed. "I'm an addict. He made me an addict." "No," Marana said, her voice ringing with sudden, cold fury. She gently tilted Seraphine's chin up, forcing eye contact. "You are many things, child. A fool for trusting him, perhaps. But you are not an addict. You are a victim." "What do you mean?" Marana looked at Kalen. The air in the room felt thin, charged. "I know this tincture. This is no herbal remedy from any human apothecary." She moved to Seraphine, placing one cool hand on her forehead, the other on her pulse point. Marana closed her eyes, and the air grew colder. "It's old," Marana breathed. "Forbidden. It's called shadow taint, a toxin brewed from corrupted blood magic. It doesn't just calm the nerves, it severs the will. It tethers the soul to the one who administers it, making the victim crave the very poison that is killing them." Ilara gasped, hiding her face in the bedclothes. "It is a coward's weapon," Marana spat, pulling her hand away as if burned. "Used to break wills, enslave minds. The detox, it will be agonizing, far worse than any human drug." Seraphine's blood ran cold. Magic? Blood magic? This was insane. But as she looked at the impossible child, the ageless woman, and the man who had defied physics to save her, she knew it was the truth. It explained the metallic tang, the hollowing void, the way Marcus's touch felt like a psychic cage. Kalen had been silent, his back to them, staring into the fire where her dress had burned. When he turned around, his face was a mask of glacial rage, and his eyes were no longer flecked with crimson. They were solid, burning red. He didn't look at Seraphine. He looked at Marana, his voice a low, lethal promise. "Lyra," he said, the name a wound. "It's the same magic they used on Lyra." He looked at Seraphine, and for the first time, she saw something beyond cold authority. She saw a pain that mirrored her own, magnified by centuries. "Marcus Thorne," Kalen vowed, the room's temperature dropping 10 degrees. "He thinks he is a player in a game of mortals. He has no idea the war he has just declared. Marana, begin the detox. We will purge this filth from her, and then I will personally purge him from this world. The detox was not a process. It was an exorcism. The shadow taint, as Marana had called it, did not want to leave. It had woven itself into the fabric of her being, and its removal felt like being flayed alive from the inside out. Marana was a relentless, unyielding warden. She forced bitter, burning elixirs down Seraphine's throat, liquids that seemed to turn to fire in her veins. "This is not a poison of the body alone," Marana explained, her voice low and urgent as she held a writhing Seraphine down. "It is a parasite on the soul. It must be burned out. You must fight it." Seraphine fought, but the taint fought back. It was insidious. It didn't just bring nausea and cold sweats. It brought him. Marcus was a phantom in the room, whispering in her ear, his voice perfectly reproduced by the magic. "You're nothing without me, Seraphine. You're dirty, broken. Come back, and I'll make the pain stop. I'm the only one who can." She would scream, lashing out at shadows that looked like his hands, his smile. The fireplace would flare with green, sulphurous light, the taint reacting to the counter-magic. Through it all, there were two constants. Ilara, who would bravely slip into the room when Marana was brewing more elixirs, placing a cloth dipped in ice water on Seraphine's forehead. The child's hand was impossibly cool, a balm against the magical fever. "You're doing so good," Ilara would whisper, her large eyes filled with a sad understanding that no 10-year-old should possess. And Kalen, he did not leave. He sat in the armchair where Ilara had first been, a silent, powerful sentinel. He did not speak. He did not touch her. But his presence was an anchor in the storm. When the hallucinations grew too strong, when Marcus's voice became too real, she would lock her eyes on him. His crimson-flecked gaze never wavered. He was the one thing in the room the shadows could not touch, the one thing her chemically induced terror could not warp. He was simply there, a mountain of stillness, and she clung to his presence like a drowning woman clings to stone. He watched her suffer, his face carved from granite, and in his eyes she saw the reflection of his own ancient burning hell. He was reliving something. He was standing vigil not just for her, but for the one he had failed to save. On the 5th day, the fever broke. The magical fire receded, leaving her shattered, weak, but blessedly, terrifyingly empty. The void was back, but it was different. It wasn't the chemical hollowness Marcus had crafted. It was a clean, quiet emptiness. It was her own. She woke to find Ilara sketching in a notebook, sitting cross-legged on the end of the bed. "You're lucid," Ilara observed, not unkindly. "Your eyes are the right color again." I feel—" Seraphine sat up, the room only spinning a little. "I feel quiet." "That's the taint being gone. Now you're just regular person weak." Ilara smiled, a quick, bright flash of teeth that were just a little too sharp. "Marana is making more broth. She's happy. She's been humming, which is scary." Seraphine laughed, a raw, rusty sound. As her physical strength returned, her mind, free of the taint's fog, began to spark. She and Ilara became inseparable. The sanctum, she learned, was Kalen's private residence, magically shielded from the world. It existed on top of a downtown skyscraper, but not in it. It was unplottable, hidden by ancient wards Kalen and Marana maintained. Seraphine, starved for knowledge, devoured the books in the library. Ilara, starved for connection, followed, finally having a sister. "Papi Kalen saved me from a fire," Ilara confided one afternoon. "I was dying. He gave me a choice." Her matter-of-fact acceptance of her new life was both heartbreaking and strengthening. Her true education came in the dead of night. Kalen was a creature of the dark, and his energy filled the sanctum after midnight. She would find him in the library or on the vast, wind-swept balcony that overlooked the city. The glass panels the only thing separating them from a 1,000-foot drop. He watched Chicago like a hawk watching its field. "You're healing," he stated one night, not looking at her. His gaze fixed on the river. "Thanks to you, and Marana, and Ilara. They helped, yes, but you fought. The taint breaks the will. Yours bent, but it did not break. That is rare." You said it was the same?" Seraphine ventured, pulling her cashmere robe tighter. "The magic they used. You called her Lyra." Kalen's hands clenched on the balcony railing. The metal groaned in protest. For a long moment he said nothing, the only sound the distant, lonely wail of a siren. "Lyra was my mate," he said, his voice flat, devoid of the resonance she was used to. It was a hollow, dead sound. "My wife. She was human, a mortal, a brilliant, infuriatingly curious scholar from the university, back when this city was still made of wood and mud." He turned to face her, and the flickering city lights caught the profound, endless grief in his eyes. "She wasn't taken in a war. She wasn't killed by a rival. She was poisoned by an organization of mortals who hunt what they don't understand. They used the shadow taint on her, trying to break her, to use her as a weapon against me." "Marcus," Seraphine breathed, understanding. "His secret society." "He is a fledgling member of an old rot," Kalen confirmed. "They thought to control her. But Lyra, her mind was her fortress. She fought. She fought so hard that when the taint couldn't break her, it simply shattered her. By the time I found her, she was gone. Her body was there, but her mind, her light, was extinguished. I held her for 3 months as she wasted away. I, who can command shadows and move like the wind, could do nothing to save her." He looked at Seraphine, his control fracturing. "When I found you on that bridge, you smelled of her, of that same shadow, that same corruption. He looked away. "I will not fail again." A new, fierce, and terrifying emotion bloomed in Seraphine's chest. It was more than gratitude. It was a deep, aching connection to this ancient, powerful being. She stepped forward, and, before she could second-guess the impulse, placed her warm, human hand over his cold, impossibly strong one on the railing. He flinched, but he did not pull away. "You didn't fail me, Kalen," she whispered. He turned his hand, his long, cool fingers gently enclosing hers. A silent, fragile pact was sealed in the moonlight. The peace could not last. While Seraphine was healing, Marcus was hunting. His rage was a cold, methodical thing. His fiancée, his property, had vanished from a locked car on the way home from their engagement party. The human world offered no clues. His private investigators, the best in the country, hit a digital and physical brick wall. Seraphine Davenport had ceased to exist. Her bank accounts were untouched, her passport flagged, her friends clueless. Enraged, Marcus turned to the darker resources of his society. He didn't care about their rules. He wanted his property back. He dispatched hounds, corrupted thralls given just enough dark magic to sniff out supernatural traces. They were disposable, and they were effective. The hounds found their opening not through Kalen, but through love. Ilara, having grown to adore Seraphine, wanted to give her a gift. She'd heard Seraphine wistfully describe a specific set of French watercolor paints she'd loved, the ones Marcus had destroyed, calling them a child's playthings. Ilara, with the impulsive logic of a girl who had been lonely for a century, decided she would get them. She knew how to shadow walk, a lesser version of Kaelin's ability. She slipped out of the sanctum, a small, invisible whisper, and reappeared in an alley behind the Art Institute, near the gift shop. She was clutching the small, colorful box, her heart thrumming with pride, when the hounds smelled her. The trace of the sanctum's ancient magic was all over her, a beacon in the night. They cornered her in the alley, 3 large men, their eyes filmed over with a milky white cataract, their movements jerky and too fast. They smelled wrong, like rotten meat and ozone. "Well, well," the first one rasped, sniffing the air. "What's a little bat like you doing out so late?" "She smells like the other one," the second hissed. "The one we're looking for." "Take the child," the third growled. "The master can break her. She'll tell us where the woman is." Ilara hissed, her fangs descending. But she was a child. She was fast, but they were brutes, and they felt no pain. The first one lunged, grabbing her. She shrieked, a high-pitched sound of pure, unadulterated terror. Back in the sanctum, Kaelin was reading. He felt the shriek not in his ears, but in his chest, a psychic knife thrust. The bond he shared with his child, his daughter, snapped taut with her fear. "Poppy!" He was gone, before the book he was holding hit the floor. He did not shadow walk. He moved. The half-mile distance between his penthouse and the alley was covered in 3 heartbeats. Seraphine and Marana only felt the explosion of raw power, a wave of cold fury that emanated from Kaelin and made the very walls of the sanctum groan. Kaelin materialized in the alley. He didn't speak. The thrall holding Ilara didn't even have time to turn. Kaelin's hand plunged through the creature's back and emerged from its chest, holding a still-beating, corrupted heart. He crushed it, and the thrall dissolved into oily black dust. The other 2 froze, finally understanding what they had cornered. It was not a little bat. It was the king. "You," Kaelin's voice was a low growl of Armageddon. "Touched my daughter." The fight, if it could be called that, lasted 4 seconds. It was not a battle, it was a dismemberment. When it was over, Kaelin stood panting in the sudden silent snow, his suit immaculate. The alley now home to nothing but piles of foul-smelling dust. Ilara was sobbing, huddled against a dumpster, her arm bent at an unnatural angle. In her small, white-knuckled hand, she still clutched the small, crushed box of watercolor paints. Kaelin's rage vanished, replaced by a terrible, aching tenderness. He scooped her up, cradling her against his chest, murmuring in a language Seraphine would not have understood, ancient words of comfort and protection. He brought his child home. When he walked back into the sanctum, Seraphine knew. Ilara was crying silently, cradling her broken arm. Marana was already working, her face a mask of cold fury, setting the bone. And in Kaelin's free hand, he held the crushed, ruined box of paints. He looked at Seraphine, his eyes full of a new, cold dread. "They found her," Seraphine whispered, her hand flying to her mouth. "Because of me. They were looking for me." "It does not matter," Kaelin said, his voice tight. "You are not to blame. He is." But Seraphine knew better. She looked at the sobbing child, at the violated safety of this home, at the man who had already lost one family to this war. Her spine turned to steel. Marcus thought she was a broken, manageable thing. Kaelin had shown her she was a survivor. Later that night, After Ilara was mended and sleeping, Seraphine found Kalin on the balcony. "He won't stop," she said. It wasn't a question. "I will end him," Kalin replied. "You can't," she said, stepping to his side. "Not in his world. You kill him, and his society will rain hell down on you. They'll use the human laws, the mortal world, to tie you up. They'll expose you. You'll put Ilara in even more danger. You'll be fighting on his terms." He turned to her, his frustration a palpable force. "Then what, Seraphine? Do we hide in this tower forever while he sends his mongrels to hunt us?" "No," she said, her voice shaking but resolute. "We fight. On my terms. He's not looking for a fight. He's looking for a thing, his property, his broken toy." Kalin's eyes narrowed, understanding dawning. "Seraphine, no, I forbid it. I will not let you go back to him." "You won't let me?" She met his gaze, her own newfound fire matching his ancient one. "You didn't save me just to lock me in a different tower, Kalin. You showed me I have a will, and my will is to protect this family. Ilara, you." She took his hands. "He thinks I'm broken. He thinks I'm still his addicted, terrified little doll. Let him think it. I won't go back as a victim. I'll go back as a spy. He will kill you. Or worse. Not if I'm not alone," she said. "He'll be watching me, but he won't be watching for magic. He won't know that I have a king in my corner. I'll go back. I'll play the part, and I will gather the proof you need to destroy him. Not just in your world, but in mine, too." He stared at her, caught between his protective rage and a new, burgeoning awe. This was not the woman from the bridge. This was the woman who had walked through fire and emerged forged. "It is a death sentence," he whispered. "It's a declaration of war," she replied. "Now, how are we going to do this?" The return was a masterpiece of controlled terror. Kalin and Marana had coached her for 3 days. Marana provided a small vial of a pungent, colorless liquid. "This will not protect you from the taint," she warned, her voice grim. "Nothing can, save for the will. But it will mask it. It will create a false positive for his senses, making him believe the taint is present and working, while your mind remains your own. But it is temporary, child. You must redose every 6 hours, without fail. If you miss, he will know." Kalin gave her the second tool. It was not a phone. It was a simple, elegant platinum earring, a single black pearl. "It is a transmitter," he said, his voice a low vibration of suppressed fury as he fastened it to her ear. "It will record every word spoken around you. It is shielded from mortal and supernatural detection. And," he touched a nearly invisible ridge on the setting, "this is the signal. When the time is right, press it. All the data it has collected will be transmitted instantly to a human associate of mine, a journalist who has been waiting a long time for a story this big. Once you press it, Seraphine, there is no turning back. His human world will burn." "Good," she'd replied, her voice cold. The final part of the plan was the most agonizing. She shadow-walked with Kalin to an alley 2 blocks from her father's townhouse. The farewell was silent, a desperate, crushing embrace in the dark. He did not kiss her. He simply pressed his forehead to hers, and she felt the entirety of his ancient, cold, desperate rage, all of it held in check, all of it for her. "Be the artist, Seraphine," he whispered, a reference to their talks in the library. "Be the one who sees the truth and paints it. Do not let the subject control the brush." Then he was gone. A wisp of shadow, and she was alone. She didn't run to Marcus. She stumbled to a police officer on the corner, a shivering, hysterical mess, just as they had rehearsed. She played the part of the confused, terrified victim. "I don't know. I woke up. I was so scared. I just want to go home." Marcus's arrival at the police station was a performance. He was the picture of the relieved, terrified fiancé. He swept her into his arms, his grip proprietary, his touch making her skin crawl. "Oh, my darling, you're safe," he murmured, his lips near her ear. And then, the whisper that the cops couldn't hear. "You have been a very, very stupid girl. You and I will be having a long talk." The moment they were inside the armored town car, his mask dropped. He slapped her, the crack of his hand on her cheek echoing in the small space. "Where were you?" "I don't know," she cried, the tears real this time. "I was lost. I was in a hospital, I think. They were hurting me." He studied her, his eyes cold and assessing. He saw the terror. He saw the shaking. He smiled. "It doesn't matter. You're back. And this time, we're going to make sure you never, ever get lost again." That night, in the sterile gold and white bedroom of her childhood, he produced the familiar amber vial. "You're agitated, my love," he purred. "You need your medicine." Her hands trembled as she took it. He watched, hawk-like. She raised the vial, her other hand coming up to steady her shaking, her thumb skillfully uncorking the tiny vial from Marana, hidden in her palm. With a gasp that looked like a sob, she drank Marana's potion, then quickly put the taint vial to her lips, pretending to drain it. Marcus sighed, satisfied, as she slumped, playing the part of the drugged, submissive doll. "There now," he said, stroking her hair as she fought the urge to vomit. "That's my girl. Broken, manageable, and mine." The next few weeks were a living nightmare. Seraphine was a ghost in her own home, a prisoner in a golden cage. But every second, she was a spy. The black pearl earring recorded everything. It recorded Marcus on the phone, laughing with her father. "Don't worry, Mr. Davenport. The merger is back on track. She's compliant. A little more taint and she'll sign over her entire inheritance without a second thought." It recorded his meetings with the society. The girl is irrelevant, but her rescuer, that is a problem. He is old, one of the original bloodlines. He has a child. They are vulnerable. Yes, Kalen is his name. He has human assets, shipping companies. We will bleed him in the mortal world. Then we will take the child. He will be broken. It recorded the phone calls that had nothing to do with magic, the illegal arms deals, the money laundering through her father's company, the blackmail of a human politician. Every night, while Marcus slept, Seraphine would go to the bathroom, lock the door, and whisper a summary of the day, uploading the data to Kalen's secure server. She would touch the cool pearl, her only link to the sanctum, and feel the faint, steady pulse of Kalen's magic, a silent promise. "I am here. I am watching." The climax was set for the Conclave, the annual supernatural summit held under a flag of truce. It was hosted, ironically, at the Field Museum. The ancient vampire clans, the Fey courts, the coven leaders, all gathered in their human finery, a glittering, lethal masquerade. Marcus, in his hubris, insisted Seraphine attend. "You are my trophy," he'd hissed, fastening a diamond collar around her throat. "You will stand by me, you will smile, and you will look beautiful and empty." She did exactly that. She was a spectre in couture, her face pale and placid, her eyes vacant. She saw Marcus schmoozing, introducing her to creatures with eyes far too old for their faces. And then Kalen made his entrance. He didn't just walk in. The King of Chicago arrived. The ambient sound of the gala, the music, the chatter, dipped as he descended the main staircase. He wore a simple black dinner suit, but he moved with an authority that made the air crackle. Morana was at his side, a queen in silver, and Ilara, looking like a porcelain doll in a dark velvet dress, held his hand. Marcus froze. He had never seen Kalen in his true element. He had only seen the human businessman he was trying to ruin. This was a predator. Kalen's eyes swept the room, passed over Marcus as if he were nothing, and landed on Seraphine. For one breathtaking second, the mask of the Vampire King dropped, and she saw the man from the balcony, his eyes a burning inferno of promise and rage. Then it was gone. "Thorn," Kalen said, his voice a polite, icy murmur as he approached. "I see you found your lost property." "Kalen," Marcus sneered, puffing up, refusing to be intimidated. "I didn't realize you were invited to events of this caliber. This is for leaders, not relics." "I am here on a matter of Conclave law," Kalen said, his voice suddenly cutting through the music. The room quieted. The neutral elder council, seated on a dais, looked on. "I bring a formal charge against Marcus Thorn of the Vitus Society," Kalen announced. Marcus went pale. "You have no right." "I accuse him," Kalen boomed, "of breaking one of the oldest laws of our truce. I accuse him of using the shadow taint on a mortal." The room exploded. It was one thing to feed. It was another to enslave. The taint was a weapon of magical slavery, a taboo that all supernatural factions feared. "Lies!" Marcus shouted, his face purpling. "The girl is unstable. She's my fiancée. I was helping her. She's an addict." "She is a victim!" Kalen roared, and the lights in the grand hall flickered. "And I have proof." Morana stepped forward, holding a crystal vial. Inside, a wisp of oily, green-black smoke writhed, the residue of the taint she had purged from Seraphine. The elder council gasped. The proof was irrefutable. This was her cue. While all eyes were on the supernatural showdown, Seraphine took one step back. I feel faint," she whispered, a perfect echo of the broken girl. "Not now, you useless," Marcus began, but she was already moving, stumbling away toward the exit. "Get her!" Marcus shrieked at his bodyguards, but it was too late. Seraphine didn't run. She walked calmly into the Hall of Gems, the cameras following the commotion at the dais. She stood behind a pillar, her heart hammering so hard she thought it would break her ribs. She raised her hand to the black pearl earring. She thought of Ilara's broken arm. She thought of Lyra's shattered mind. She thought of the woman on the bridge. So desperate to die. Never again. She pressed the ridge. Back in the main hall, Marcus was being surrounded by the Conclave's sentinels. "This is a setup. You can't prove—" His words were cut off by a new sound, a chime, and then another, and another. Every phone in the room, human and supernatural, lit up at once with the same breaking news alert. "Thorn and Davenport, in massive fraud. Audio evidence released." Marcus's blood turned to ice. A reporter's voice suddenly filled the air as someone played the news feed. It was his voice. His voice, recorded by the earring, boasting of the blackmail, the arms deal, the plot to steal the Davenport shares. "The girl is irrelevant. She'll sign anything I put in front of her." The human world, Kalen's world, and Seraphine's world had just collided. The society members who had been at his side moments before vanished into the crowd. His father-in-law, Mr. Davenport, simply collapsed. Marcus was alone. "You—" He turned and saw Seraphine standing at the entrance to the hall, her face no longer vacant, but alive with a cold, beautiful fury. You filthy human bitch! He lunged for her, his fangs descending, all pretense of civility gone. He would rip her throat out. He never made it. Kaelin was suddenly there, not a blur, just a wall of absolute power. He didn't strike Marcus. He simply caught his fist, his grip like a steel trap. The sound of bones crunching echoed in the hall. "She," Kaelin said, his voice a lethal whisper as Marcus screamed, "is not yours." The Conclave sentinels seized Marcus, dragging him away. "You will answer to the Council for the Taint," the elder decreed. From the front entrance, the sound of mortal police sirens grew louder. The human authorities were storming the museum. Kaelin didn't wait. He shrugged off his suit jacket, wrapping it around Seraphine, pulling her against his side. "It's over," he murmured. He looked at the chaos, the arriving police, the horrified supernatural council. Let them tear him apart. He pulled her into the shadows of an alcove, and the world dissolved. They reappeared in the sanctum. The silence was overwhelming. For a moment, they just stood there, breathing. Then Ilara was there, launching herself from the hallway into Seraphine's arms. "You did it. You came back. You really came back." Seraphine fell to her knees, holding the girl, and finally, let the tears of victory fall. Kaelin knelt beside them, his hand gentle on Seraphine's hair, and for the first time in centuries, the king's shadows receded, banished by the light of his new, chosen family. This story is not just about a woman who was saved. It is about a woman who saved herself. True strength is not measured in power, or wealth, or immortality. It is found in the quiet, terrifying courage to face your own vulnerability, to stand up when you have been broken, and to reclaim your right to exist. Abuse, in any form, thrives in silence and in shame. It is a poison, like the shadow taint, designed to make you believe you are worthless and alone. It isolates you. It convinces you that the cage is safety. But love is not possession. Love is not control. Love is protection. It is the hand that steadies you while you learn to fight for yourself. It is the voice that reminds you of your own light when you have forgotten it exists. Kaelin, the immortal king, believed he was saving the mortal girl. But in the end, it was Seraphine, the woman who had faced the darkest parts of the human and supernatural worlds, who taught him a lesson he had forgotten. That even a single flickering candle held with a steady hand has the power to defy a millennium of darkness. Never let anyone or anything extinguish your light.